Hey, hon, the Bells are coming over for dinner.
On the inside?
Yes, we're gonna eat inside tonight.
Okay, well, the only problem is I wish we had more room here because with the four of us here, it's kind of a little tight.
We'll just pull the table out.
We can do that?
We can. Surprise. Hello and welcome back to Tires on the Road. In this video, we are going to attempt to reconfigure our dinette table in our 30 RLS Avenue to be able to slide out away from the window to give us a little bit more elbow room, and also to be able to rotate 90 degrees and slide back against the window. But the goal is to be able to have it slide out for more room and then rotate 90 degrees and push back against the window so we can use it in either configuration. First thing I'm going to do is remove the top and see if I can create a mechanism that's going to allow that to be able to meet our goals that we're shooting for. All right, here's another little tip too, is where these connect to the wall. Originally they were screwed in out here to the side paneling. Well, those came out in about the first 300 miles. So what I did was, and it was real easy, I simply just took the D-rings that they had here and came around and put them underneath the bolts that they're using to hold the table legs on. I don't know why they didn't do that in the first place, but much more solid, it's not going anywhere, and I don't have to worry about them coming out of the wall when we're going down the road. All right, we're going to remove the table. We're just going to take these 6 screws out, and that will get that table free, and we can move on to the next experimental idea. So let's see if we can make this work. All right, we're off to Home Depot to see if we can make this work. Got my list, got the plan, and we will see how close we can get to getting this thing pivoting. Actually, I'm going to Lowe's. I like Lowe's better. Check, 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 check. So I need the carriage bolt and washers. This bottom is going to go up underneath of the, actually it'll sit, yeah, this way, of the steel rails like this. This one here is going to sit up on top of here, which will sandwich that in there. Spacer will go in here like this, past the steel frame. And then this piece is going to mount on top of that, which is going to sandwich that existing steel frame in here. Then there'll be one bolt in the middle, which will allow this to spin on the top of this aluminum. So that's basically it in a nutshell. And the table, this will mount to the bottom of the table to allow it to spin. Then, if you want to pull the table out from the window, it'll just slide out like this and slide back. In theory, let's see if it works. So next we need to find the center of this top panel, which will mount to the bottom of the table. And this is probably the most crucial point, is we need to make sure we get that carriage bolt, our carriage bolt, which will be countersunk into this top piece, because this will be up against the table with a washer on it, so we get a good bearing surface. It's going to go like this, right through the center. Then it'll get a washer on the bottom and a nylock nut, which would be our center of our pivoting point for that table. I'm going to drill this and put the bolt in as our center point before I do the aluminum strips. This isn't critical, but this is super critical. So once this is in, then I'll take it back apart and I'll put our aluminum spacers in. And then I have some small washers too if I need to shim this up a little bit to get a little more clearance. I'm hoping that this piece of 1/8 inch aluminum will be sufficient. And it can have a little drag on it too. I don't want it to be super free. You know, it'll take a little work to pull it out and spin it and then push it back in. Keep your scraps too, because you know what they say about these? Potential. These have potential. Start out with a little bit, then I'll go to a bigger bit. Pilot hole. Little sneak peek. If you know what that is, you know where it's going to go. That's coming up. Before I hit that 3/8 hole, I'm going to use an 1.5 inch paddle bit, and I'm going to try and countersink this without totally destroying this plywood. That'll allow that nut to sit down below the top of this. And I'm not going to go the whole way. I'm just going to go a little bit, and then on the bottom of the table, I'm going to countersink it a bit so that I maintain some structural integrity with these pieces, so I don't countersink this so far that it gets weak. Get you in here a little closer. So I brought that down, put that in there, it's below, and then this will sit in here like so. Now we'll finish it out with a 3/8. Now this bottom piece is a little bit narrower than the top piece because the way those angles form when they bend them over, it's a little bit narrower on the inside. Now we have the top board done, which will mount to the table. We can put this aside for a second. Now we're going to have to cut our aluminum and put our aluminum strips in here, which will be our shims to make up for the thickness of the angle iron supports on the rig. I'm going to have to take this inside and scribe it so I know where to put the shims. Three-foot piece I got at Home Depot. Just going to cut it in the middle. That's 18 inches. Got the aluminum cut in half. Now I'm going to drill and countersink 4 holes in each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, so that I can screw this to here. Here's the little screws I'm using to hold on the aluminum strip. And by the way, if you haven't had a chance to hit that subscribe button down below, right now is a great time to do that. Make sure you give us a thumbs up as well. Something else that I've added inside of our channel is playlists. If you scroll through there, you'll have several sections where we have RV modifications, and then I have under 5-minute modifications as a playlist. And what that is my video is less than 5 minutes. Just gets to the point, and gives you tips and ideas on what to do with your RV. Plus there's coastal California RV camping, West Coast RV camping. So make sure you head over and check out our playlist. I'll put some links down below for that as well. Now I'm going to use this countersink, these holes, so that our little screws will sit down flush and the tops of these heads will be below the top of this shim. Now that we have our 2 spacers drilled and countersunk, we can go ahead and mount these to our bottom board. Now for the moment of truth, let's go in the rig and see if this is going to work the way that I thought it was going to work before we mount the table. I also might have to add a couple washers underneath these shims to make them a little thicker, depending on how much drag there is trying to rotate that top piece. All right, let's see if this is going to work. Got my nut, got my washer. This is the top piece. And maybe not. Let's give it a go and see what happens. So we're going to put this in here like this. Okay. Then we're going to add the washer and the nylock nut. By the way, all you husbands out there, sorry if your wife sees this video and makes extra work for you. I've had some comments that our videos create a lot of work for Avenue owners because the spouses see something that we do and the next thing is, I want that in our RV. So my apologies to you out there who have RVs, and hey Mugs, and I create a little bit more work, but you know, got to share the good ideas. All right, let's see if this slips in. So that's front there. Would you look at that? Actually, it is backwards. This needs to rotate. See how this looks under here with the table on. This top board will screw to the bottom of this, so that'll be one piece. And then I'm going to take that piece of threaded rod and I'm going to run it from here across to here to help hold these two tangs together. Now this piece back here, I'm going to have to cut here and here, but I'm going to leave these pieces because when the table's out, it'll slide over this rail and keep the table from pivoting when you're having dinner with it in the original configuration. Okay, we have the hole drilled. This is going to mount like this with a screw in it, which will hold these two sides together. Here's a special note. Make sure you clean up are the leftovers from drilling that hole, so they don't get under your slide right away, because they'll stick to the bottom of your feet. Here it is in place, the base. It's going to slide out, and then you can rotate the table and then slide it back into where you want it. That's if you want to rotate the table 90 degrees. I'm going to add a washer here so that when I tighten down this nut against the bottom piece, it doesn't deform that piece of plywood and stress it out. The same thickness as our shim here. All right, because this carriage bolt sits up a little bit taller than the plywood, I'm just going to remove some material here on the back of the table so that that has a place to recess into. I don't want to recess this anymore because it's 1/2-inch plywood, and the more I recess it, the weaker it's going to get. So I'm splitting the difference. I took some out here when I recessed this, and then I'm going to take some out here. Something else I'm doing as well is I'm going to actually scoot the table over towards the couch or the recliners a little bit, so I have a little bit more equal room on the left side versus the right side. Okay, I'm going to mount the table to the swivel device now, and I'm doing it this way to make sure that I can unscrew the table in the future if I ever have to get back to this bolt, as opposed to taking this top plate off, screwing it to the table, and then trying to get it bolted back on. Because this is a carriage bolt, they're a little difficult sometimes. They'll start to spin, and if that spins and I can't get the screws out, there's no way of getting back to it. So I'm making sure that my screw locations are such that I can reach them from the bottom and remove them to get this top off if I ever had to. Using a countersink, because these screws need to be flush underneath to allow this top piece of plywood to swivel. So I'm going to drill them from the top first, and then I'm going to come up from underneath and then countersink them. I'm going to put the tabletop on now and make sure everything works well. Make sure your screws are short enough so you don't screw through the table. See how I'm able to get to all these screw holes? All these screws now. Now we need to deal with this stock piece that was here on the back of the table. I didn't want to do anything with this until I had everything mounted up to make sure that when I cut it and remove it or whatever I'm going to do is going to be the right thing. So to make this table rotate, it looks like I'm going to have to cut it here and remove this piece all the way across to here. I'd like to leave these pieces so that when the table slides out, it locks it and it keeps it from rotating.
Can do that?
We can. Surprise.
Well, look at that.
Would you look at that?
Wow, that does a little better.
Does that give you a little more elbow room sitting there?
Yes, it does. And I still have somebody sitting next to me here, so that's perfect.
Perfect. When you're working at the desk, let me show you another little trick that you can do with it.
Okay.
Now, when we're done with dinner, all we have to do is remove the chairs, get them out of the way a little bit, and we can take the table, we can push it in and rotate it push it back. And now you can pull this chair over here and you can set up your computer and have a nice view and be able to work. So,
and we both can sit there.
yes, and let me add to that too. Or you can pull it back out, rotate it around, slide it back in, and you can put a chair here, and you can put a chair here, and we could both sit here and have our breakfast while looking outside. Ta-da!
Pretty snazzy, I might say.
All right, well, we hope you liked this episode of Tires on the Road, and we will see you in the next video.